Hello, everyone. Caleb here. I'm from the South. So, before we get into any of the fun stuff, aka the actual guns themselves, we have to learn how the South got their guns and how, in general, despite not America not going through the revolution yet, the Industrial Revolution, that is, they were still able to get guns, which are a manufactured item, obviously. So, uh, with market purchases combined with sizable stocks that accumulated over the years in state and local arsenals under the Militia Act of 1808. This allowed the South to possess from 285,000 to 300,000 military firearms. This was an ample supply for a short war, but this didn't end up really being that short of war, in all honesty. So in 1859 to 1860, the Springfield Armory alone transferred 104,000 older arms to Southern arsenals. See, the greater part of the Confederate rifle were produced at armories in Richmond, Virginia, and Fayetteville, North Carolina. The Richmond Armory, led by Brigadier General Georges, used rifle musket making machinery salvaged from the destruction of the Federal Harper's Ferry Armory following the first few weeks of the war. By the end of the war, April 1865, an estimated 107,000 shouldered arms had been manufactured throughout the Confederacy. That sounds like a lot, but when all things considered, because of just how many they already had, that is a very small number, nearly a fourth, essentially, were made by them. Everything else was either stolen from the North, aka Jacoby's team, or had been bought from England, which is another option I'll get to later, or they were taken from the Mexican War that had just previously happened. American troops had supplied help for for the Mexican armies trying to take back their land. Now, with the exception of machinery seized by Virginia state troops at Harper's Ferry on April 17, 1861, most of the modern arms making machinery and equipment and most of the raw materials were industrialized in the North at Jacoby's area. So you might be thinking, how did we do it? Well, we bought a lot of it, the South. When I say we, I mean us, the South. So our main manufacturer was Sinclair Hamilton and Company. It was a main manufacturer, funny little elephant on the barrels for them. Although there were others just so insignificant that their involvement was unrecorded, and let's be honest, no one really wants to take accountability for doing that kind of thing. So William Greener was the gunsmith for Sinclair and Hamilton and Company, and now he owns his own company called W. Greener. I did email them, refused to comment on their involvement in the Civil War. They did say they did do it, but they did refuse to comment for which side. Now you're thinking, we have the guns, right? But how do we get them anywhere, right? Well, there's two main ways on a battlefield. One, to get to the battlefield in general from anywhere, usually our two armories. The South had around 9,000 miles of track and had converted its locomotive works into an armaments factory. The trains allowed generals to move their soldiers, supplies, and armaments to where they were most needed. If you don't know, armaments is like your bullets and most of your guns, to where they were most needed. Rail centers and railroad infrastructure soon became targets for attacks. Because of this, things called ironclad cars were made. Basically, they were train cars with so much armor plating on them that they had to move slow, but most guns couldn't pierce them at the time. Now, once they're on the battlefield, the trains brought them over, and now they're near the battlefield. Something called a caisson, Cassion, which is a two-wheeled transportation device used to transport specifically either the dead or the ammunition. So these things are running from the trains out with ammunition to give to the soldiers, and then running back with the dead bodies to dump and get more ammunition with. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the topic you're all waiting for: the guns themselves, huh? All right, to start with, we got an 1853 Enfield pattern rifle musket, length of 55 inches with a rifle barrel of 39 inches. That means the stock was there was the stock and then 39 inches of rifle barrel. It had a weight of 9.5 pounds, caliber of .577, using mini balls and paper cartridges. Effective range of 400 to 500 yards or 150 feet for all you real Americans. Muzzle loaded single shot, meaning you can only shoot one bullet. Percussion cap, three-handle branded barrel with a walnut stock. Walnut's always good material for taking immense amount of pressure. Forward sight and large adjustable reel sight, also used for many federal troops, but mainly used by Confederacy. Then we got the M1861 Springfield rifle musket. It has a length of 55.8 inches with a rifle barrel of 40 inches. It had a weight of 8.9 pounds with a caliber of 58, using mini balls and paper cartridges. It had an effective range of 400 to 500 yards. It's effectively the same as the 1853 Enfield pattern rifle musket. It had a muzzle-loaded single shot, same thing as the other one. Percussion cap action, three-banded barrel with walnut stock, forward sight, and adjustable rear sight. That means that you were able to take your little scope on the top and adjust it to see how far you needed to go, usually between that 400 to 500 yards. If you're really good, there was reports of it being able to shoot 720 as long as they were a sharp shooter. Now, next on our list, we have an 1841 Mississippi rifle with a length of 49 inches, rifle barrel 33 inches, and at a weight of 9.3, caliber of upgraded to a .58 mini ball paper cartridge, effective range of only 400 yards, not farther. It is a muscle-loaded single shot, percussion cap action, one barrel with walnut stock, forward sight, mount, and a mount for a sword, bayonet, brass patch, and an ammo box on the button stock. That's a lot of attachments, huh? Next on our list, we have the Robinson Carbine. Now, the Richmond rifle and the Robinson Carbine are fun in the fact that they're actually copies of the North's original designs. We took them off, the South took them off the dead bodies and repurposed them for our own use and changed slight things. Now, for the Robinson Carbine, we get a length of 38 inches with a rifle barrel of 21 inches, weight of 8 pounds, caliber of 5.2 or .52 paper cartridges. No mini balls needed, once again. Effective range of 300 yards. Since it's a carbine, it shoots lever action, means it has a trigger guard. Breech-loaded, single shot, percussion cap with a falling block. One branded with walnut stock, forward and rear sighted, like Sharps has pronounced, rectangular block on the receiver. That doesn't mean much to most of you unless you're a gun nut. Effectively, it means that it could shoot fast and it shot well, but only up to around that 300 yards, at which point it started going off target. But it was a very good gun if you were able to get your hands on it. An AMA 1860 Colt Army revolver. These are the first revolver on the list. The rest have been rifles with length of 14 inches or a barrel of 8 inches. Weight of 2.7 pounds, caliber of .44 paper cartridges, effective range of 75 yards, percussion cap action, 6-round cylinder, walnut hand grip, ball or canonical bullet. Loading lever, rammer under the barrel. Forward sight, round barrel, single action. No senses on cylinder. All 44 became Army models, while the 36 later became Navy models. These guns were, after the war, used in the actual Army and Navy, respectively, for a .44 or the .36 for Navy. Now, for our swords, yes, we had swords. We had an M1840 cavalry saber. It had a length of 35 inches, usually 41, counting the Hemel. The width of the blade was 1.25 inches, quite a thick blade on the outside with a good part for blocking others' blades, with a weight of 2.8 pounds, and then a steel blade with a blunt top edge. That means it couldn't stab, but very good for slicing. It has sharpened lower edge, and the scabbard's normally steel, wood, or iron. Steel would be a lot more expensive, but provided better guard, Wood would be basically free because, again, it's just a piece of tree. And iron would be a mix, but it also weighed a lot more than both other options. Sometimes, if you were really lucky, you had brass handguards with 3 bars, while wooden hand grips were wrapped in leather and copper wire, which wouldn't have felt great on the hands and thus increased callus, so you can grip better. It had blood grooves, fullers, on the side of the blade. That way, if you stabbed someone, sometimes it would get locked in and they wouldn't be able to pull it out of themselves without causing mass bleeding. Uh, Captured M1840s and copies were mostly used by Confederate sabers. Woo, that's us! And now bayonets, what we'd lock onto our guns. It had a length of 18 inches, 21 with a socket, around average, of course. For a weight, it was around 8 pound. There again, average for many types. Usually our steel blade, which usually 3-sided with a sharp point. Socket fit for the end of a musket barrel. Blood grooves on each side. Do again, stab in and make sure they can't pull out easily. Most were M1855 socket bayonets, but there were many other different bayonet types. Confederate bayonets, that's us, were often iron with steel tips. This is because the iron was a cheaper version and was easily metalworked, while the steel tip provided a hardening unit. Because if you didn't know, if you harden something, instead of when you stab something, it would mushroom. Instead, it would shatter inside them when it was stabbed. It didn't really see much combat, although it was used in both Gettysburg and Cedar Creek, for more famous examples. Used most often for cooking over a fire, digging, mounting a candle in the socket end. But the most important thing about a bayonet was that it was, since it was a very tall pyramid, when it had 3 pieces, if you stabbed someone, it'd be impossible to stitch them back together because a bayonet had 3 prongs, and thus it took off the skin that would have been held together via stitches, meaning you couldn't stitch someone after they had been stabbed.
The way the North was able to get weapons to their soldiers was mainly through trains because they had more access to railroads compared to the Confederate Army. And that's why they had so many more weapons compared to the Confederates. The M1859 Sharps carbine. This was used by cavalry due to its shorter length and being easier to use on horseback. This rifle was stolen and copied by the Confederates. It was manufactured by the Sharps Rifle Manufacturing Company. The new models weren't made with patch boxes, which, it's not as popular as a rifle than the 1859. That's just something I thought I'd mention. And the fact that the Confederates made copies of it shows how popular it was during the war. The Burnside Carbine. The Burnside Carbine was the first weapon of the U.S. Army to use the metallic case cartridges, which is a single shot. 100,000 of these were made, and production was canceled in the middle of the war, or towards the end, to make the Spencer repeating rifle. The lack of cartridges was this rifle's downfall. It was made by Ambrose Burnside. The Burnside originally had a flaw of being very difficult to remove the cartridge, but after fixing this error, they found a new error of the cartridge getting jammed. But after they fixed this, that's when the Spencer came in and they stopped production. The M1850 Staff and Field Officer's Sword. This sword was commonly used on horseback, and its weight was a major concern during fighting, mainly considering that it was used on horseback. And it was more symbolic than useful. And I know this isn't a federal guy, but this is the sword that Robert E. Lee used, but it was mainly used by the federal forces. The sheath was commonly leather and steel, and was produced by Tiffany & Co., Glaze, Justice, and Silver firms. The M1851 Colt Navy Revolver. The Navy part of the name isn't referring to the branch of military that it uses, this, but rather the caliber of the weapon. It was made by Samuel Colt, and they were produced in Connecticut and were contracted to be made in Whitney, Connecticut during the Civil War. This is the Spencer carbine. The Spencer carbine's magazine held about 7 rounds, and it did not have to be reloaded after each shot like a musket. The Spencer carbine was shown to Gideon Welles, the Secretary of the Navy, and the Navy quickly bought more of them from the Spencer Repeating Rifle Company / Christopher Minor Spencer. The Napoleon gun. The Napoleon gun was a cannon that fired over 1,000 yards, and it wasn't named after the most famous Napoleon, but was named after Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew. It was originally manufactured for the French military, but was mainly put into use by the Federal forces in the Civil War. The U.S. Army made about 1,100 of these. The M1861 Springfield rifle was the most popular rifle used in the Civil War. There was an estimated 1 million rifles manufactured. The Union got the Springfield from the Springfield Armory. The government contracted with over 20 private firms to meet the demand for the rifle during the war.